Hello everyone, my name is Ajay Ranjit. My student ID is BEC2095. Today with this video, I would like to introduce the case ASIC versus Narain with subcontents like introduction, background of the case, ruling of the case, impact of the case, followed by conclusion. Let's proceed for the further introduction. Corporations have a responsibility to ensure that they provide accurate information to the public all the times. The directors of sub corporation have a duty of care to ensure that their actions and public statements are not misleading and deceptive. The Corporation Act of 2001 set a legal framework to discourage the direction of the corporation in Australia from engaging or allowing the corporation to initiate actions and the public disseminate the statement to be deceiving and misleading. In this context, the Australian Securities and the Investment Commission, ASIC, itself a constitution body, has been established to investigate and control corporations through the directors and the representatives from the engaging in misleading and deceptive practice. A recent case, ASIC versus Narain, demonstrating that the way sections 1041H of the Corporation Act of 2001 can be applied to address instance involving corporation engaging in the misleading and deceptive behavior. The current paper of the detailed review of the case and the analysis of the impact has been implemented on the Corporation Act of 2001 in Australia.
Hi, this is Tian Wang. My student ID is NIC2056, and I'm going to talk about the background of the case. And the case referring to the current paper was an appeal lodged in the federal court in Australia involving the three-judge bench lodging the ASIC seeking to the overturn ruling of the real judge in a lawyer case against Mr. Naring. It was evident in the case that the company had not provided any proof to back it claims that it had not undertaken effective and reliable studies designed to ensure that indeed their solutions work as marked 2008 in the initial case. The court with a single judge bench ruled that the company had not flouted the provisions of the Corporation Act of 2001 regarding misleading and deceptive practices from the corporation operating in the country, and the judge in the initial trial ruled that since the claim did not touch on the shares and the stock of the company had it is in the market, it then did not engage in the deceptive and misleading practices covered in the section of 10441H of the Corporations Act of 2001. It's important to understand that the role of ASIC in the framework adopted in Australia to help regulate the provisions of the Corporation Act 2001 and other laws regulations developed to provide and checks the balance required in the conduct of corporation are implemented fully. ASIC works with different public and private agencies to ensure that the corporation that flood any of the laws set out in the country are sanctions and held responsible for any action or inaction that could compromise the interests of the public. It's imperative to more that ASIC serves as the legally mandated body to question and critique and the action the public statements that corporation makes in the country. As such, its role in the case reviewed in the current paper had to understood from the context covered in the current section. In the appeal, ASIC was seeking to have the actions of the company declared misleading and deceptive as per provision of the section. The appeal sought that have the court to hold the company and its directors liable for misleading and deceiving the public in such a way that it could benefit from claims that were clearly ethical, immoral, and illegal. From the argument present in the appeal case, it was evident that ASIC maintained its earlier position. Posited in the first instance trial, the Ms. Narin was liable of flouting the duty of care that he had as a director in the public corporation in Australia, the consequence of his action of failing to provide proper guidance to the company and allowing it to float the status on misleading and deceptive practices indicated that he was unfit to serve in my cooperation in the country. As such, ASIC was calling for court to make a determination that Mr. Narain failed to undertake his duties as a director as required from him. Thereby, he be sanctioned and barred not to serve in any position of leadership in any corporation for a reasonable period as could be determined by the court. Considering the detailed and exhaustive nature of evidence that ASIC provided to the federal court, it was clear that the ruling from the lower court was likely to be overturned, rendering the appeal successful.
Hey, this is Sulav Sijapati, and my student ID is EMV22447, and I'm here to talk about the ruling of the case. In making their ruling in the case, the judges has to answer two main questions based on the argument that had presented before them and consider the reasoning behind the ruling that the judge of the lower court had made in the first instance hearing. First, the judges had to determine if the company has floated Section 1041H of the Corporation Act of 2001. The section provides a clear framework that should be used to determine if a company could be issuing misleading and deceptive information through the statement that it makes to the public. Second, the court had to determine if the director of the company, Mr. Narain, was liable of failing to act and ensure that his duty of care as the director of the corporation was undertaken and exclusively as required. Once the issue was determined, the federal court would then consider the decision that the judges had made earlier during the first instance hearing of the case. The judges in the case open hearing and determining the evidence and argument provides, determined that the company had indeed acted in a way that did not comply with the 1041H of the Corporation Act 2001. The judges found that the company has misled and deceived the public in significant way, considering that it did not provide any evidence of the claim they made. It was evident from the arguments that ASIC presented that the company had not been able to provide sustainable evidence that could show that it has indeed developed a solution that could aid in helping address the spread of HIV and heal those suffering from common cold. The judges found that the initial ruling had erred in a significant way by interpreting the provision of the Corporation of Act 2001. In this context, the three judges unanimously overturned the ruling that the judge who had heard the case in the first instance hearing. As such, the ruling of the lower court was set aside, which marked a major win for ASIC, which was seeking a proper legal basis to try such of misleading and deceptive action.
Hi, my name is Bao Dung. My student ID is AC2058. My part is about the impact of the case. The case provided an effective basis to which ASICS could use to try cases relating to business corporations that often exaggerated claims regarding the natures of services and products that they offer with the aim of taking advantage of consumers across the country. The case ensured that business corporations develop an elaborate system and framework that allow the dissemination of information to the public in a way that details of such information could be verified as required. The case further brought to the fore importance of corporations to ensure that all their statements and communications were factual and truthful at all times. The case was used to act as a sensitization measure through which issues of ethical and moral communication in business could be used. It is evident from the ruling that the federal court set the precedent that was to be used to ensure that all business could not provide a factual and truthful information could be accused of wrongdoing and tried in a court of law for liability they have accrued. The case also provides a clear definition of the responsibilities that directors had, especially in the way they communicated with the public. Mr. Narain had been identified as having failed to provide the leadership that were required in the circumstances that the company was in at that time. Um, Considering that he was found liable, the situation of Mr. Narain meant that many other directors and business leaders across the country would take more seriously their duties as required of them and ensure that own business as legally, ethically, and morally as required of them all the time.
Hello everyone, myself Mousam Kc. My student ID is PVS 2052. Today I am going to conclude the ASICS versus NARAIN case. The ASICS versus NARAIN case provided a clear basis for the organization to ensure that they provide the way they provided information regarding their services and products to the public. The corporations have to ensure that they market their goods and services in a way that is within the provision of the Corporations Act 2001, especially Section 1041H and the other laws and regulations developed to enforce such a requirement. The case has had a significant impact in the jurisprudence of the corporations in Australia and elsewhere across the world. Finally, the case has helped raise the levels of responsibility that individual business demonstrates in their communication and the way director guides their organizations to communicate with the public. Thank you.